It's no secret that the last several games in the Battlefield franchise have suffered from divisive gameplay decisions, mixed reviews, and some very rough launches. Battlefield 4 had a terrible launch that was practically unplayable for many, with server crashes and bugs galore. Hardline was a departure for the series, introducing us to a cops and robbers setting, launching just a year after the catastrophic launch of 4 and developed by a different studio. It was extremely divisive. However, today, many call it the most underrated Battlefield title. Battlefield 1 had perhaps the smoothest launch and reception of any of the recent games, going on to have one of the biggest launches in recent history for a Battlefield title. Many have called it the last great Battlefield game. 5 is still divisive today and is another contender for the most underrated title. It made adjustment to the movement by allowing players to sprint while crouched and lay on their back and side, as well as introduced the fortification mechanic, which, in my opinion, was one of the coolest additions to the series, all of which was swiftly abandoned just in time for the next title in the series, which brings us to 2042. It had the worst go of things. Server issues, bugs, wildly divisive and downright odd design decisions, balancing issues, and much more that I don't think actually needs to be talked about, as practically every other gaming YouTuber has done so. So what's next? Perhaps you'd like to see a Bad Company 3, Hardline 2, 2142 sequel, or maybe just a simple remaster of Battlefield 3. Well, that's what I hope to tackle in this video, folks. It's Cinder here, and we're going over what could, should, and shouldn't be in the next Battlefield game. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like. Let me know your ideas and what you think of mine in the comments, and please, for me, hit that subscribe button. It really makes me feel special. Now let's get on with it. First, and perhaps most importantly, is the setting. There's countless possibilities here, as Battlefield is already a franchise that spans multiple time periods. Personally, I'd prefer we avoid going back to the World War settings, as it's kind of gotten stale to me. Between World War II and Vanguard, Battlefield 1 and 5, and indie titles like Hell Let Loose, I've had about all the World War I can stand for the moment. What does that leave us with, you ask? Well, plenty. Let's start off with what I think is not only the most obvious choice, but also the most popular. Bad Company 3. Well, I mean, let's look at it logically. Bad Company 2 is one of the most popular games in the franchise, even managing to have a player base up until it was announced that it'll be shut down this year. It wasn't a big one, but it was a player base. That's incredible for a game that's 13 years old. Top of that, there's an entire generation of FPS gamers who, like myself, hear all the time about how great Bad Company 2 was, yet we missed out on the opportunity to play it. Don't you think we'd like to jump in at the opportunity to play a Bad Company game? If you don't, I just point you to the financial success of the recent MW2 and how many bought it, just because of the praise they heard about the original. Granted, it's not the exact same situation, but I think it's close enough to get the point across at least. People want to play games, or in this case, sequels to games, that they've heard great things about. I never got to play Bad Company 2, and I'm definitely one of these people. If given proper love and attention, unlike the new MW2, I think it could do really, really well. Next up is probably the safest course of action and the second most popular, a modern setting. I know Bad Company could technically be modern or near whatever. Be it a Battlefield 6 follow-up to BF4, a simple BF3 remaster, or even something like a Desert Storm setting, I believe a more modern setting would be the safest route. It's easy to get right, as there's not an issue with historical accuracy like in older settings, easier balancing due to the lack of futuristic gadgets, vehicles, weaponry, as well as there not being any specific expectations due to an earlier title's popularity, as would likely be the case with a Bad Company 3. Personally, I think a proper BF3 remaster would be the best way to win back some fans while a new game is developed, but that's just me. Another really popular option is Vietnam. Another Vietnam game could be really good for Battlefield, and it's a setting they haven't visited in quite some time. Battlefield Vietnam released all the way back in 2004. That's 19 years ago. We haven't had a big Vietnam game since, Call of Duty Cold War? And it's been even longer since we've had a good one. It's truly an underrepresented setting in modern gaming. Include Russia via the Cold War, create some fictional wars, and boom, 4 factions, 2 for each side. If done right, the game sells itself. You're welcome, pay me later, DICE. Now for the one that I believe is the least likely. Another near future game. After the catastrophic launch of 2042, I think DICE will be eager to distance themselves from the setting for the time being at least. But if they didn't, what would they do? Would it be a follow up set in the same ravaged, dystopian, boring world as 2042? Or something different that would effectively wipe the slate clean? I actually couldn't think of much for this one, so please let me know your ideas for this in the comments below. I really have no idea here. Alright, now we're getting into the more unique settings. First, a futuristic game. Most likely a sequel to 2142. Like Bad Company 2, I missed out on 2142. I didn't play the series until BF3. That said, I would love a game with large-scale destruction-oriented gameplay with mechs. I mean, Titanfall meets Battlefield. Fuck yeah, I'd play that. As a salty infantry player that hates vehicles, I would love fighting against a futuristic tank or helicopter while in a mech suit. But don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware of the issues this could bring. A futuristic setting would likely also have some form of jetpacks, which could be hell on game modes, where having a clear front line is important, like Breakthrough, as well as the problems balancing mechs and futuristic gear, but I don't care, it sounds so good I can't help but inhale that copium. Okay, next up is Hardline 2. Technically, I know this could fall under modern or even near future or near past, but I wanted to make this its own point due to the cops and robbers theme. I've got to be honest, I didn't hate Hardline. I think it was a very unique shakeup for the series, and if they had dropped the Battlefield name and just marketed it as a cops and robbers spin-off called Hardline, it might have performed better. It really didn't help that it only launched a year after 4, so people were still playing 3 and 4. I'm definitely a part of the group that thinks it was criminally underrated. See what I did there? Criminally. and I and I wouldn't mind a sequel. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Before we go on, if you're enjoying the video, how about leaving a like and subscribing? About 80% of my viewers are unsubscribed, and changing that really helps the channel out a lot. Thanks. Okay, with settings out of the way, now we're going to talk about the match size. I was actually really excited for the 128 players. I love Battlefield because it was Battlefield. Large-scale, destruction-oriented warfare with up to 64 players. So naturally, I assumed increasing the number of players would make it even better. And I still believe that to an extent. I just don't think doubling the total number of players was the right call. Perhaps something slightly smaller like 88 or 96. Also, there better be a robust squad system at launch with actual incentives to play squad lead, like how 5 lets you call in mortars, smokes, vehicles, and things like that. Alright, now we're going to address one of the most divisive topics of 2042, specialists. In my opinion, specialists add absolutely nothing to the game that can't be achieved just as easily, if not better, without them. I don't hate them, they just seem pointless. Specialist trait? BF4 had perk packages, BF1 had a huge selection of perks, and BF5 had combat roles for your class, as well as weapon perks for your weapons, all without specialists. Specialist gadget? Just add another gadget slot. Unique specialist gadgets like McKay's grappling hook and Sundance's wingsuit should be situational pickups found around the map, like the weapons in BF4, zip lines and grappling hooks in Hardline, or the elite loadouts in Battlefield 1. Not to mention, all those specialists just add another layer of balancing concerns on top of vehicles, classes, weapons, and gadgets. I'm looking at you, Zane. Just stupid explosive spam. They take away any semblance of character customization outside of paid skins, which I guess that's going to be a given no matter what. They completely eliminate the feeling of being a regular soldier, and they force people on both teams to use the same specialists, leading to difficulty identifying enemies. I literally can't play hardcore because I shoot my teammates just as often as my enemies. What we need is a character customization like Battlefield 5, but even better. So I want to make a video on this part to go more in depth, but until then, we'll talk about it here. Free-to-play titles. Free-to-play is often an easy way to pull in new players, and Battlefield is really no exception. And Battle Royales being the most common free-to-play experience, many have been asking for a Battlefield Royale. Disclaimer, I'm personally not a fan of BR games. However, I don't really think that a BR is what we need. The genre appears to be somewhat losing its appeal, with many players turning their eyes to more challenging and hardcore risk versus reward gameplay provided in extraction shooters like Tarkov, Hunt Showdown, or DMZ. Personally, I think the best free-to-play option for Battlefield currently is to embrace, innovate, and expand upon the ideas they presented in Portal. A live service model could work really well with this type of, I don't even know how to describe it, this type of setting, with them releasing content from all the older games with new updates. People could make their own BR experiences if they wanted. If done properly, it could be the Battlefield experience. For another idea of what I'm talking about here, look to Roblox or Fortnite's creator mode. They let you build your own game mode. So I'm not too sure if this is the route they should take now, if free to play in general is the route they should take now, or if they should just wait until after the next entry. What do y'all think? Okay, finally, let's talk content. I'm about to throw a lot of numbers your way, so stop me if I lose you. Bad Company 2 launched with 33 primaries and 12 maps. They added 5 maps and 18 weapons with DLC. Battlefield 3 launched with 39 primary weapons and 9 maps. They added 20 maps and 21 weapons with DLC. Battlefield 4 launched with 64 primary weapons and 10 maps. They added 23 maps, counting the Zavad Nighttime remake and remakes from older games, and 29 primary weapons with DLC. Battlefield 1 launched with 30 weapons and 9 maps. They added 16 maps and 20 weapons with DLC. Battlefield 5 launched with 30 primary weapons and 8 maps. They added 11 maps with free DLC, 12 if you count the Firestorm map and game mode. None of this includes the secondary weapons, gadgets, vehicles, or game modes that were available at launch and added with DLC. Battlefield 2042 has a grand total of 36 guns, including secondaries and excluding the near useless portal guns, which there are 21 of. It launched with 7 maps, all of which had to be reworked, and has added 5 maps, one with each new season. There's also a few portal maps, which are maps from the older games, but we never got any more of those released. Little else is known about any future content other than the fact that a 6th season will be happening. There's a shocking lack of destruction, horribly unbalanced specialists, and maybe 3 to 5 maps that aren't completely hated. That's a little disappointing, but I'm not going to dwell on it. It just needs to be said that the next game needs more content on launch day and in future updates. There's tons of possibilities for the next Battlefield, each of them with massive potential to be incredible. All DICE has to do is acknowledge the criticism they have received and work to create a better game for launch day. Between the rough launches, 2042's odd design decisions and lack of content, banning Ghost Gaming from the Discord for absolutely nothing, suspending Enders for criticizing a dev, and doing absolutely nothing to acknowledge harassment that creators like BP McKee and Ash are facing in-game, DICE has a lot of work to do to win back some goodwill with the Battlefield community. I truly believe if the next game doesn't knock it out of the park, it could mark the beginning of the end for the Battlefield franchise as a whole. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks for sticking around until now. This is a new video style for me, and it was a lot of work to get right. Sure, I did it the most convoluted and complicated way possible, but who cares? I'm learning. If you enjoyed the video, please, for me, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more videos like this. My channel is a great place for FPS content and legacy Battlefield content specifically. We're always playing 4, 1, or 5. And let me know in the comments what you'd like to see from the next entry, and whether or not you think Battlefield could soon be joining iconic titles like SOCOM and Medal of Honor in the Great Shooter Graveyard.